This is your Sound Off Extra review for a giant heaping pile of shit presented by WWE called Backlash 2018. From the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, I am the Solomonster, and I'm running a Twitter poll right now. I'm going to actually wait until the end of this review. You guys are voting as we speak. I'm very anxious to see where this poll ends up here in the next 20 minutes or so. This show honestly doesn't even really deserve a 20-minute review because outside of the opening match, and it's interesting the way these things work, when you have a really, really horrible show, which this was, they usually have at least one match that's really, really good. And so this show followed the same blueprint. The opening match is one of the best WWE matches of the year. And not only is it one of the best WWE matches of the year, the opening match here I think is one of the best opening matches to any WWE pay-per-view in many, many years. That's how good that Intercontinental Championship match was between Seth Rollins and The Miz, and I don't want the stink of the rest of this show to rub off on that match because it really was. I mean, the work was great, the match turned out to be great, the right person won, the crowd followed along exactly as you would have wanted them to. They were totally into it. It was everything I love right now about pro wrestling in that match, and after that, it was all downhill from there. This show outside of the opening match was an abomination. This show was an abomination. And I don't want to spend more time on this review than I have to, so I won't. I'm going to get into it now, and we'll get into the finer points as we move along here. The kickoff, I'm just so pissed. You know what I'm pissed off about more than anything else? As I sit here right now beginning this review, it is 11:37 p.m. Eastern Time. The pay-per-view only went off the air a few minutes ago. This pay-per-view went until 11:30 at night. For nothing. For no good reason whatsoever. So it's bad enough when you have a bad show, right? You have good shows sometimes, and other times you have bad shows. You take the good with the bad. It's just dragging out these bad shows that just it just infuriates me. Because there's no need for a show like this, like Backlash, to be this long. So anyway, the kickoff match was Bayley taking on Ruby Riott. This after a backstage segment with Bayley and Sasha Banks with dialogue that was so bad I've seen high school plays that were more believable than this. On Monday, the story being that Bayley sat in the back while Sasha was overwhelmed by the Riott Squad during her match with Ruby Riott, and she lost. So, tit for tat, same thing happened here. Sasha earlier in the night refused Bayley's invitation to be in her corner for her match. And after some interference from Liv Morgan that backfired, Ruby hit the Riott kick and picked up the win. So, again, this feud has been dragging on now for years, it seems like, with Sasha and Bayley. And look, I'm all in favor of a good story that's drawn out, long-term booking, long-term storytelling. When you have the right story and you tell the right story in the right way, I'm all for it. This thing lost its juice months ago. And there were stories of Sasha having heat and, comments that she's made in interviews or that she's vocal backstage about not being happy about certain things. Who knows what is reality and what is fiction when it comes to that? All I know is that this thing is dragged out way too long with very little movement. There's been very little advancement, and I'm just done with this. I'm ready for this to be over already. And this was a feud I was looking forward to. Sasha, Bayley, maybe Sasha will go heel, maybe we'll get the old boss back, maybe we will, maybe we still will. I'm at the point where I just don't care. So that's where we are with that feud. Now, before they went on the air, one of the more lighthearted moments here, Booker T was running down the AJ Styles Shinsuke Nakamura match. He was previewing it, and he said that AJ was in his mid-30s and just hitting his peak. For the record, AJ Styles is 40 years old. So perhaps on this fictional television show, AJ Styles is mid-30s. But in reality, he is not. Pay-per-view opened with the best thing on the entire card, which was The Miz challenging Seth Rollins for the Intercontinental Championship. We had dueling chants to start. Crowd was hot right out of the gate. This turned into one of the best opening matches, like I said before, in WWE. I don't want to say the best opening match ever. I mean, I can't say that when you've got matches like Brett versus Owen and matches like that, but this is up there. This is up there. Michael Cole kept talking about how hot Rollins is. I thought he was about to start tossing dollar bills at him, but he's right in that there is nobody in the company right now with as much momentum and goodwill built up, I think, behind him is Seth Rollins. And that includes Braun Strowman. This dude is just firing on all cylinders right now. He smacked his knee into the post at one point. It made a sound. It made this great sound. You would have thought he cracked his kneecap. He sold the leg for the remainder of the match. Miz immediately locked in the figure 4 leg lock. It was so loud in the building. It was just this electric atmosphere. It was so much fun to follow along here. Did not stop, by the way. This knee injury did not stop Rollins from hitting his superplex off the top. But when he went for the Falcon Arrow, Miz countered that into what I believe was the second skull-crushing finale of the match for a great near fall. Miz tried for a third one off the middle rope. Rollins knocked him down. He tried for a curb stomp off the ropes, but Miz moved. Rollins sold the knee again. A lot of reversals back and forth here until Rollins finally hit the stomp for the win. Fantastic match. I cannot say enough good things about this match. And I was left with 2 impressions when this thing was over. First of all, I thought, well, the show just peaked. And I was right. That was number 1. Number 2, Rollins is the guy right now. And Strowman's right there with him neck and neck, but Rollins is the guy. And third, Miz against Daniel Bryan, which we will eventually get, is going to be a lot of fun. It's not just going to be good because of the backstory and the promos and the verbal stuff back and forth. These two are going to have a great match or great matches together. Daniel Bryan, we all know he's a great pro wrestler. Miz, I don't think gets enough credit. He's really upped his game in recent months. Everybody's praising Rollins, and rightfully so, but don't sleep on Miz. He hung in there with him, and he's really been killing it lately in a lot of his matches, even going back to WrestleMania, right? The 3-way, that was also an excellent match. So I'm letting you know right now, this is the peak right here. This is the peak of this review. This is the peak of this pay-per-view. This is the best thing you're going to see or hear about all night. After this came Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's Championship. I was not much of a fan of this. Nia was tossing Alexa around for a while like a rag doll. She tried multiple times for the Samoan drop. Alexa countered each time. Nia had her set up for a Vader bomb in the corner at one point. Alexa shoved her off the ropes. Nia took a nasty spill out to the floor, hit the apron on the way down. And, from here it was just Alexa beating on Nia and beating on Nia until finally Nia was able to hit the Samoan drop. This was all building to the Samoan drop spot. When she finally hit it, it was Nia catching Alexa in midair, going for Twisted Bliss. She hit the Samoan drop and got the pin. Now, that wasn't enough because the story of this match, of course, is that it's all about bullying, right? We had Alexa Bliss doing these promos, feigning, I've been bullied by Nia Jax, and in reality, of course, Alexa has been the bully. And so I get what they kind of were going for here after the match. They had Nia get on the microphone, and she basically narrated a public service announcement for the company's Be a Star campaign. It was a PSA for Be a Star that was disguised as a wrestling promo. And again, I get kids are watching, and it's a great message for the kids, but the way that this was delivered was nauseating. She talked about herself like she's some kind of freak. Remember when they had Kane talking about how, freaks are cool? Well, guess what? Kane wore a mask, and he used to shoot fireballs out of the ring posts. The dude was a freak. For Nia, you would think this poor woman, she's got a hunchback coming down from the bell tower or something. She dedicated her win to all the people out there who have been bullied, and she said that, in the end, bullies always get their asses kicked, which is actually not true. Michael Cole then plugged the Be a Star campaign, all the different events that they've done. This came off more like a commercial than anything else, which is probably why the people were booing Nia. This did not work. They were booing the poor woman through the whole thing. Jeff Hardy against Randy Orton for the United States Championship. Short, fine for what it was. It may have been the second or third best thing on the entire show. Fans were so into it, though, early on that they were chanting Rusev Day. So it took a little while to get people to sort of get into this here. Orton gave Hardy not 1, not 2, but 3 back suplexes on the barricade outside. Jeff later tried a springboard back into the ring. Orton caught him picture perfect standing drop kick. When Orton, pulls these little moves off here and there, when he comes out, you get the impression that this guy just, rightly or wrongly, you just sort of get the impression this guy just doesn't care. He's there, he's doing his job, he goes home, and it's just not a priority for him, right? But when he's on, he really is one of the best, I have to say, in terms of his timing and things like that. He's got certain, I don't know, he's got certain senses and certain traits about him that not everybody has. So that kind of shined through a little bit here in this match. Orton went for an RKO, Jeff dodged it, got a roll up for a near fall, hit a twist of fate out of nowhere and a swanton and got the pin. He landed right on top of Orton with his entire body ever since he came back, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. It was an observation I had last year. I said, ever since Jeff came back, you'll notice every time he hits the swanton, he lands full force on his opponents. It's not this, well, his head sort of scraped them BS. He just lands right on top of them, and I like that. I like it because, it looks more devastating that way. Orton can win or lose. It doesn't really impact his standing. For Jeff, though, he's new to the Smackdown brand. He's got the U.S. title. It cements him as, a top or sort of upper tier babyface on the brand. So I think it was the right result. We had a segment with Elias. This was the sports entertainment segment here. Elias came out to do some music. Talked about Bruce Springsteen, being that they were in Jersey. Fans were not cooperating, and when I say they weren't cooperating, they were making a lot of noise. They were cheering for him. Elias didn't like that. He threatened to leave. They cheered. He went to go sit back down. They booed. It's cool to watch him because, when he's out there, he's got the crowd typically in the palm of his hand. So that's always fun to watch. This was just designed to get the New Day to come out. New Day started singing. Elias cut them off. He was getting ready again to do his thing when all of a sudden Aiden English came out. And he introduced Rusev, much to the delight of the entire crowd. Again, Elias cut them off. That brought out No Way Jose with all of his conga line people. Elias cut him off again and said enough. And before he had the chance to begin his little concert, lights came on. Bobby Roode, robe and all, was in the ring, and he hit the glorious DDT, and he congaed on out with No Way Jose and all the other mid-carders. So that was the segment. I actually liked it in a perverse kind of way. I thought it was entertaining. I enjoyed it. One of the few things I enjoyed on this show. Daniel Bryan against Big Cass. Another short match. There were a few of those here on this show. I said earlier today on the Sound Off when I recorded my predictions, I said I had a hunch that Bryan was going over in this match, and go over he did. Wasn't the most exciting match. He's got a lot of work to do. Cass is he's not headline material right now. Maybe he will be one day, but right now he's not. The right man won. Bryan was running wild with the corner drop kicks. Cass wiped him out with a clothesline. Turned him inside out. He had a few more clotheslines. He went for a big boot. Bryan ducked. He took Cass down, got him in the yes lock. It took some work, but once he got it locked in, Cass tapped out quickly. He tapped out, and that now, the outcome in terms of Daniel Bryan winning did not shock me because that, I had predicted that when I did my predictions earlier, but the way in which he won via quick tap out, that I did not see coming. That surprised me. And as Bryan celebrated, Cass knocked him out of the ring. He very sloppily threw him around outside by his hair. It didn't look good. He threw him into the ring, hit a big boot to the face. So they kept the heat on Cass to keep this feud going for at least one more match. But Bryan picks up a submission win over a guy twice his size. So Bryan now, in terms of big pay-per-view matches, not counting the greatest Royal Rumble, is now 2 for 2. So, not really a whole lot more to say about that. Cass still needs a lot of work. We had Charlotte and Carmela for the SmackDown Women's Championship. This was no good. Not after the match that Charlotte had with Asuka at WrestleMania for the championship. This was a huge step down. And even worse, Carmella worked over Charlotte for most of it. So we mostly got Carmella screaming and shouting the entire time. which got very annoying after a while. Finish came when Charlotte missed a moonsault, landed on her feet. She tweaked her left leg, her left knee. Carmela saw this, gave her a super kick to the hamstring, rolled up Charlotte, forward roll, and pinned her. 1, 2, 3. So this was disappointing. But my expectations were not exactly high going into this match. Only thing that really surprised me about this was no Peyton Royce and no Billie Kay, who were there because they were on the kickoff show. So we knew they were there. They were in the building. And they've been, having a lot of interaction on TV with Charlotte, obviously, and Carmela as well. And they did not come out during this match, so that was surprising. This was a lot cleaner of a win than I expected for Carmela. So then we had the WWE Championship match. There were a lot of people I noticed on my timeline on Twitter very upset because why is the WWE Championship match not headlining this show? There is no Universal title match. Roman Reigns is just in a regular plain old singles match. This is ridiculous. This is stupid. And I agree, because this is the match that under normal circumstances should have headlined the show. But once the finish happened, it became very obvious why it did not headline the show. I'll be honest with you. Seeing the actual finish of the main event on this show, I'm not sure that doing this match last would have been much worse. It actually might have been better. So they were having a pretty good match until the finish. This is the second straight match between these two men that has been marred by a disappointing finish. And the whole purpose may just be to prolong the feud. There may be a means to an end here. It's part of the story, whatever. The fact is, they've had two really good matches with two really shit finishes. Wherever it leads. Just look at these shows in a vacuum for a second. This was a bad finish. 2 times in a row now on pay-per-view. Your WWE Championship match. Basically, if you think about it, we've now basically had back-to-back double count-out finishes in WWE Championship matches between these two men. And can somebody, for the love of God, please buy AJ Styles a cup? Let's all start a GoFundMe, and we'll buy this man some sack support. How many times is it going to take before he does something to protect himself? It's ridiculous. It's beyond believability at this point. Nakamura at one point during the match gave AJ good vibrations, and Corey Graves called it bad vibrations. You see, because he's a heel now. I actually appreciate that little attention to detail. I noticed that. I appreciate that. Again, it's just, you watch these matches and sometimes you get caught up in them and then they give you a finish like the one they gave you here and you just shake your head. It's like, why do I even bother? Why even bother getting invested in these matches? Why? What's the point? What is the point? You just feel like you're wasting your time sometimes. More often than not. Nakamura gave AJ a low blow, and AJ came back with a low blow of his own. So both guys were down. Got back up, and Nakamura was going for the Kinshasa. He had brought a chair into the ring earlier. AJ grabbed the chair. He launched that chair at Nakamura. It sounded great. Little did I know at first that part of the reason it sounded great was the chair ricocheted off of Nakamura and it came back and hit AJ right in the face. And he was bleeding from the left cheek pretty badly, actually. I can imagine what that's going to look like tomorrow. But yeah, that chair came back and hit him full force right in the side of the face. Lucky it didn't hit him in the eye or something. So he was bleeding for the remainder of the match. He gave Nakamura a calf crusher. He was able to get out of it. Styles went for the Styles Clash. Nakamura got the ropes. Another low blow from Nakamura. And, as I mentioned before, he gave AJ the low blow. AJ gave him the low blow, tit for tat, back and forth. Anyway, the point of all this is that the match ended with both guys kicking each other in the crotch at the exact same time. So, you know what this was? This was sort of a funnier version, because it was comical seeing them both, fall down at the same time with these pained expressions on their faces. But it was basically the finish, if you remember, to the Rock Mankind match when they had their championship last man standing match back at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre show. And that was worse, because I remember that actually looked I don't remember that looking too great. They both, the finish there was they both hit each other in the head at the same time with steel chairs and sort of knocked each other out. And I remember that being very disappointing as well. It was funny seeing them kick each other low at the same time, but I think most people would have expected them to get up, and they didn't. And you got the no disqualification stipulation here, which I guess technically doesn't count out situations like this, but it really should. I mean, again, it's really stupid to do a no DQ stipulation, but have the referee counting when both guys are... It's just stupid. No DQ implies that there must be a winner. That's the implication there. And so the referee is counting, and neither man gets up, and the ref calls for the bell. So, of course, people were pissed. They booed. They chanted bullshit. So another very good match between these two guys, marred by a shit finish that will lead to yet another match. Well, I'm trying to think, what other kind of crappy finish could they give us in the next match? Tweet me some suggestions or put the comments down in the comments section. I'm sure if we put our minds together, we can come up with even worse finishes than this. We had Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. I don't know why this match even happened. I really don't even know what the purpose of this was, unless the only purpose was to break up Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And for all we know, they'll be back on television tomorrow night like nothing even happened. I guess we'll see. Did we really need this match for the breakup? Couldn't you just have a segment on TV with the two of them? So they lost again. Kevin Owens was pinned by Bobby Lashley after his standing delayed vertical suplex. What ended up happening is Kevin Owens was upset because Sami Zayn was ready to throw in the towel. He went to go leave, and Kevin Owens said, "No, we stay and fight." And finally, Zayn relented and said, okay. And instead what he did was he grabbed Owens, he grabbed his best friend, he chucked him into the ring, he threw him to the wolves. Owens got beaten, he got pinned. And poor Kevin Owens, who already lost the match, Braun Strowman went after him outside, threw him back into the ring, for no good reason. The babyfaces came off here like total heels, like a bunch of dicks. Strowman gave Kevin Owens a running power slam. Eventually they grabbed Zayn, they brought Zayn in, and he gave Zayn the power slam. And by the end of this, when Strowman was hitting his big finishing move, nobody cared. That's how bad this whole situation is. Braun Strowman next to Seth Rollins, at least on the Raw brand, you want to count the whole company, I guess you could throw AJ in there, but Braun Strowman is like, he's supposed to be the most over guy in this entire company. Most weeks, the crowd goes nuts for him. Here, he hits his big finishing move. Complete apathy. Complete indifference. Nobody cared. So this was just a complete waste of time. And also, by the way, at the very end here, I don't know how many people could hear the referee outside the ring screaming and shouting at Braun Strowman. He was yelling, "Scream, scream," because he wanted Strowman. He probably got the cue from the back. We need Strowman to do his monster scream. So as soon as the referee shouted that, Strowman did his big yell, his big primal scream. At that point, I was screaming as well, although for very different reasons. And then came the so-called main event of the evening. And I looked at this and I said, I'm trying to be positive about this. Because up to this point, I was just completely sick of this show. I was just fed up that I had wasted my night on this. And it just was not a good show. It just was not fun. And I'm like, let's try to be positive about this situation at least, because Samoa Joe is headlining the pay-per-view. That's pretty cool. Joe missed his second straight year WrestleMania. He was out hurt. Didn't know what he was walking back into, and now here he is headlining the pay-per-view. So for Joe, who he's supposed to be a heel, but he's very over as well right now. I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. And the match started with some promise. Joe went after Roman Reigns before the bell even rang, gave him a Uranage through one of the announce tables and laid him out. People were totally into it, as you would imagine. He was throwing Roman over every announce table at ringside, all three, left him laying. I said, all right, this is pretty cool. Maybe it'll be a short match. It's getting kind of late. He's kicking Roman's ass. I dig this. After that, it was all downhill. We got Rest Hold City at 11:15 p.m. We got crowd chants of boring, CM Punk, beat the traffic, Rusev Day. People did not care at all about this match. And you know what? I don't blame them. I don't blame them. And it was mostly Samoa Joe doing rest holds, which whoever laid this match out, well, I don't know if it's on them, who's responsible. Whoever is responsible for this needs to have their head examined. Needs to be relieved of their duties and reassigned to a different department within the company. I don't know whose bright idea it was to be doing rest holds in this match at 20 past 11. They did an arm drag. You want to know the brilliance of these minds here in this company? As if that wasn't bad enough. Somebody in the back thought that it would be so wise and so smart to have Samoa Joe lock Roman Reigns in the coquina clutch and do an arm drop spot. Like the traditional babyface arm drop spot. Drops once, drops twice. You go to drop it 3 times and the guy comes alive. They had in their infinite wisdom the bright idea to do an arm drop spot this late in the show with the most hated man in the entire company. I know that's not how they view him. They view him as the man. He's the guy. He's the big dog, woof woof, and all that bullshit. I get that. But they did an arm drop spot in this match with a guy who every time he comes out gets booed out of the building. If that isn't a sign of how out of touch these people are, I don't know what is. I don't know what other exhibit I could possibly show you. So this is dragging on, and I'm thinking to myself, at this point, even if Samoa Joe wins, it is not enough to salvage the show. But at least Joe maybe will get a big win, and he's supposed to challenge for the WWE Championship. He was on television last Tuesday saying whoever the champion is coming out of the show, AJ, Nakamura, whoever it is, I'm coming after you. And so wouldn't it be nice for Samoa Joe to get a nice clean win here on this show and then move on to the WWE Championship picture? How foolish of me. I tend to get a little delirious the later it gets in the evening. I promise you I wasn't drinking that much during the show. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more had I been drinking. We all know how this ended. We all know how all of these situations end. Roman Reigns hits a spear and gets the pin. And I say, we know how all these situations end. Roman has lost his fair share of matches recently. I understand that. But in this case, a clean win for him over Samoa Joe is just mind-bogglingly stupid. That's what it is. And as soon as he hit the spear and got the pin, WWE will cut to the crowd sometimes for these crowd shots, and they'll show people reacting. They cut to the crowd right after the pin. I'm not just saying this out of anger or I'm a Roman hater. I say this in all sincerity and all honesty. I cannot recall another time where they cut to the crowd immediately after the finish of the main event and you saw people bolting for the exits and getting up out of their seats as quickly as these people were in Newark. They could not wait to get out of that building. The people who were left, that is, because people had already left. There were photos from the building. There were large pockets, large swaths of empty seats. People could not wait. Their feet could not carry them quick enough out of the Prudential Center. I don't really know what else to say. I'm disgusted by this show. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Outside of the opening match, this show was an abomination. It was a colossal waste of time, and it is extraordinarily aggravating to see how stubborn this company is when it comes to the whole Roman Reigns situation. And I thought perhaps the losing of late was part of a plan that would lead to Roman snapping, that would lead to Roman feeling desperate. Perhaps he would make the turn, because they've got some real solid baby faces already on that brand who, believe me, if Roman turns, it's not the world is not over. Henny penny, the sky is not falling. There are people who are more than capable of picking up the load as the top baby face on Monday nights. You can do it. This is not John Cena 10 years ago. Oh my God, if we turn John Cena, who else is there? You have options. There are other people. But they insist. They just insist on the status quo. We've got our plans. We've got our ideas. And they will not change. And so you end up with a situation like this, with people just shitting all over the main event. They did it at WrestleMania, and they did it here. And guess what? They'll do it again next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, until they wake up. Whoever laid out this show and put this show together, I'm not laying this on the talent, even though there weren't that many great matches on this show, but just in terms of how truly awful this show was, I can't put all of that on the talent. This is on the company. Especially what we saw there towards the end of the show. They should be ashamed of the show that they gave us tonight. Outside of that opening match, I keep saying that like a broken record, but it was the only saving grace of this entire show, and I want those guys to get all the credit. Because this company sure doesn't deserve it. Not after tonight. I'm looking at the poll right now. I told you I'd come back to this poll, let you know where we are at this point. Poll has not been up for that long. The poll's only been up about half an hour. And to show you what the overall consensus is here, right now, we've got almost 2,000 votes. Already, almost 2,000 votes in this poll on Twitter. 8% thumbs up. 92% thumbs down. That 8% is all from the opener. All from the opener. Because if not, that's about 7% more than the show deserves. So there's still plenty of time. You want to voice your opinion. You agree, disagree. You want to give this a hard thumbs down. Be my guest. At Solomonster on Twitter. Poll's going to be up a couple more days. Leave your comments in the comment section down below. If you agree, disagree, I don't care. But have at it. I'll be back for the usual podcast on all the usual outlets. Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify. Next Sunday. And we'll be back here for, I guess the next pay-per-view is Money in the Bank. So we got about 6 weeks to build up this next pay-per-view. I sure hope they've got something better in mind. Because this show was a colossal waste of time. And it really shouldn't be surprising considering how little effort was made to promote this show, because it was all about the Saudi Arabia show, right? It was all about the greatest Royal Rumble. And that's what happens when you have a pay-per-view one week and literally another pay-per-view the week after. And that pay-per-view the week after gets the shaft. They cobbled together a bunch of matches here in the last couple of weeks. And this is what the end result of that was. Not a lot of effort put into this show. That much was obvious. The people running this show are morons. I'll see you guys back here soon. Take care.